Hello and welcome to Off the Fence, a podcast where we deconstruct difficult decision making to help us figure out what keeps us stuck, and more importantly, how do we get unstuck? I'm your host, Karen Covey, a former divorce lawyer, mediator, and arbitrator turned coach, author, and entrepreneur. With me today, I am so excited to have Amy Lynn. And Amy is the founder and CEO of Anew, a tech platform making family law more efficient and affordable for everyday Americans. Anew simplifies the complex legal process into a guided experience paired with financial analysis, form filling services, and on-demand consultations with vetted experts. Before founding Anew, Amy spent 13 years building teams and products from 0 to 1 in financial services and healthcare. She also went through a 3-year divorce herself, which put her through the firsthand experience of the pain points in family law. So she knows of what she speaks. We'll just put it that way. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Karen. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. And, anything new and innovative in the legal system is always fascinating to me. And I know that's what you're trying to do. But before we dive into that, I'd like to talk a little bit about your story. How did you go from getting a divorce to creating a tech platform about divorce?
Yeah, so my divorce is a little bit of cliche. It's a pandemic divorce. My ex told me that he wanted to leave the marriage in 2021. And initially, it was really hard for me. But ultimately, I respected his decision. I did not expect the divorce to drag on for 3 years. Especially our marriage only lasted for 20 months. So it was a very confusing process as well. At different points, I was like, how did this drag on so long? And initially, I had an attorney. And 1 year into the case, we just hadn't really gotten the momentum of the case going. There's no significant progress, and we hadn't even started the settlement talks yet. So that was the time I was like, all right, the legal fees are accumulating very quickly. Maybe I should give pro se a try. So I started representing myself in the case. And as with any legal case, facts are very important. And in a matrimonial case, the facts are the finances of the household. What I learned is, in front of the judge, it doesn't matter who cheated on whom or who's a narcissist in the relationship. Ultimately, it comes down to how are you going to divide up the money. So I really stuck with that principle and did a lot of math. I calculated all of the marital assets and debts. I tracked all the income and expenses over the course of the marriage. I traced all of the transfers in different accounts. I also did the research and did the calculations of the home equity split in different kinds of scenarios. So that certainly helped making me feel like comfortable presenting the case and presenting the facts in court. But it was a very manual and labor intensive process. I spent so many nights and weekends, just reviewing the different pages of the financial statements, reviewing different lines, different transactions, and did all the math by myself. So having worked in tech, I was like, it'll be so wonderful if we have an application that can remove some of the most cumbersome tasks, like what I'm doing right now. And then just, do the math and give you instant insights into the finances of the household. That would be great. So that was the origin of Anew.
Okay, I'd like to wind you back a little bit because that's quite a story, but I just want to make sure I heard you right. Your marriage was 20 months long, but your divorce was 3 years, meaning 36 months long.
Yes. There was a lot of waiting also, like in between the court hearings, but I think mostly it's because there was a lot of frivolous motions and requests.
And, that's important for people to hear because there you were with a short marriage. Theoretically, this could have been wrapped up in a couple of months, and it doesn't always happen that way. If you have someone who is filing a lot of motions, who is obstructing discovery, who is not willing to settle quickly, it takes as long as it takes, right? So it doesn't matter who you are, or what you do, you can only control your side of the street, so to speak, right? Your spouse is on the other side.
Exactly, exactly. And ultimately, you have to believe you have some kind of control over the direction of where the case is going. Because it's so easy to feel like powerless in the process, but sometimes you have to think, all right, I can't control what the other side is doing, but I can control how I'm handling it, how I'm reacting, to different motions and different requests, and how am I going to, drive the process to a resolution. So in the beginning, I was really frustrated, but as we kind of go into the case, I was like, you know what? I try to think of this as an exercise of my negotiation skills or like my project management skills or financial planning skills, et cetera, et cetera. So try to look on the bright side and try to find kind of an angle that can give you the sense of being more in the driver's seat.
Yeah, and you started with a lawyer, and you said you went along with the lawyer for what, a year
Yeah, a year.
ish?
Yes.
And your legal fees started to mount, which they will do if you're, going to court. There's motions, there's discovery, there's all the things, right? What made you make that decision? I mean, how did you decide, okay, this isn't working, or I want to try going pro se. I want to do it myself. What was your thought process as you approached that decision? Because a lot of people are terrified to not use a lawyer, right? They think that that would be a big mistake. Other people jump into not using a lawyer without really thinking through the consequences, and then that's a mistake. So I'm just curious about what your thought process was at the time and how you made the decision.
Yeah, so a year into the case, we had two court hearings, and the two court hearings were about the procedure of financial discovery. And I just felt like every time we spoke as a group, both sides, we were not getting to the point. And it was like very frustrating to me. And I was like, I really wanted to help. And being a solution-oriented person, I was like, I think I have some ideas in terms of driving the conversations toward the core issues instead of going around the discovery scope. Because the two court hearings are actually about first, we're going too broad. Now we want to narrow. So which way is it? Is it broad or narrow? I just feel like we spend a lot of efforts on things that are not actually super related to to this resolution. Like what's exactly, the top concern from the other side, and what exactly are we not seeing eye to eye in terms of numbers. So I really wanted to drive the conversations to that way. And, being represented by an attorney, you cannot speak in court because you're being represented. So I talked with my attorney. I was like, I just wanted to give it a try to see if we can kind of make the conversations flow in a different way. And he was actually very encouraging. He was like, yeah, go for it. And initially I asked my attorney to stay on as a consulting attorney. But because for that 1 year, I already asked a lot of questions. I also did a lot of homework myself. I read a lot of articles. I kind of started to get a better sense of the framework that's needed, in a court setting. So I actually end up doing a lot of things just by myself without the need to, consult with my old
Mhm.
attorney. But I would say, really the key reasons to go into pro se is I wanted to have a solution, and I just felt like we're not really getting to that. And then number two is just the fees are just getting really high. And I think whether you want to be a pro se or not, ultimately it's also about your ability or your willingness to pay for the attorney fees.
Yeah, 100%. And I'd like to, I'm curious though, before we go deeper into this, did your husband have an attorney?
Yeah, he had. And he actually, in the middle of it, he changed his attorneys. So he went from like a solo attorney to an attorney team. So that was also the trigger point. I was like, this is getting out of hand. I'm not gonna continue to fight with an attorney team. It's not that complicated. It's a short marriage, and I think I got the numbers straight. So that's also kind of a big push in terms of going into pro se.
So when you became pro se, did your husband then also become pro se, or did he keep his team?
He kept his team.
So you were going up against an attorney team.
Yes. And it was
Wow.
it was not easy. I think the challenge of being a pro se is in a way you're kind of challenging the system, because in court a lot of the informations are kind of gate kept by the attorneys, and they don't like someone who's kind of outside from the system. I think it's very natural, because anytime someone has been in a system or in a process for a very long time, it's always been that way, and all of a sudden, someone's changing that. It's natural for someone to have kind of a resistance against that. So I think initially I did get a lot of side eyes and eye rolls, and people dismiss me, even though sometimes I'm saying things, right and factual. But I didn't take it personally. And I think for listeners who are interested in taking kind of a pro se approach, be prepared for that, but also don't be too afraid of the reactions that you'll get. Ultimately, everyone's gonna get used to that. As long as you stick with the facts, you're okay. If there are something that you don't fully understand in court, it's totally okay to slow down and ask the judge or the court to explain, certain terms or certain procedures. Or if you feel like, oh, you have to consult an attorney before coming back to the discussion, do it. Like, the court will grant the request. Actually, they want everyone to feel like they are making conscious decisions in court. And don't ever let anyone pressure you into thinking, I have to make a decision right now, or, never feel like you're in a rush, because these are all important decisions. Ultimately, it's you who are living the consequences of the case.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, you've mentioned a couple of times now the word discovery. And for anyone who's listening who doesn't understand what that means, because in the legal context, discovery has a very specific meaning. And it means the process of discovering information, either financial information or information about related to the children, if you have children, or information related to the issues in the divorce, right? And so that's a place where a lot of cases go to languish for years and years and years and years, right? Because there's a lot of abuses of the discovery process, or places where it can get pushed aside, continued, things drag on, as you found out. And that's what the solution of your process, your software program, is designed to address. So can you tell me a little bit more about that? What is your software and what does it do?
Yeah, I would say the core product of Anew is the financial discovery process. So we make the process a lot easier for our users. And by just linking your financial accounts directly or uploading your financial documents, we can give you an overview of your net worth, your sole versus joint accounts, a very rough estimate of separate and marital assets / liabilities. And then we also give you an income and expense report for all of the transactions in the last 24 months. And then we also have a calculator for home equity split. And you can run numbers in different scenarios. What the numbers would be if you are selling the house and buying your spouse out in terms of equity. What the numbers would be if you're staying in the house but refinancing with the current interest rate. What's the monthly expenses going to be like post the divorce? Or there are also people who are kind of considering nesting options. So basically kind of having the kids stay in the house, but also have separate places for the parents. So what would that look like? So we give you, a set of planning tools and also discovery tools to make the process a lot more easier and clear. So you have that overview of the finances of the household. You can also do budget planning through our tools, so you get a better sense of what to expect after the divorce. So that also kind of get taken into consideration of your decision. I think I've been paying a lot of attention to Karen's work. I love what you're saying about decision-making science. I really do believe a lot of the decisions, half of it really is about running the data and then think about whether the data makes sense. The other half of it is emotionally, are you going to be okay with this set of numbers, this set of expenses, this part of the settlement? So we hope, with Anew, we can make that decision-making process a little bit easier and more clear, so you have a roadmap in terms of how to approach your case.
Makes total sense. Let me ask you a little bit of a devil's advocate question, right? Because a lot of what this software is doing, excuse me, it seems like it's the same thing that a CDFA would do.
Mhm.
In other words, a certified divorce financial analyst.
Yes.
Why use the software and not a financial planner?
You can use both, or you can choose either one, right? So it's essentially kind of doing the same work, but a CDFA is also expensive. I think on average, a case with a CDFA would cost about $5,000. And some CDFAs also charge by hours. So it's like $300 per hour. But with Anew, it's a fraction of that cost. So right now we're offering free access. So you can, really play around with the numbers and play around with the settlement planning and figure out what you want to do next. So we really want to make the process a lot more affordable, especially for people who are just everyday Americans. So we want to help you save money and also save time in the process.
So you say on your website,
Mhm.
doing the math right wins the case. What does that mean?
Doing the math right is basically getting the facts of the case straight. So when you get the facts down, you pretty much figure out the the framework of the case, and you have a leverage in the negotiation process. Um, and finishing the calculation of the key assets, liabilities, and kind of expenses during the marriage and after, spousal maintenance and child support, those are the key questions that the court pay attention to the most. That's basically what you're going to talk about in front of the judge. And that's 90% of the casework. And the rest is basically filling out forms to get your divorce decree. So we really believe for a lot of the cases, especially, regards to settlement or kind of asset distribution, it's really about doing the math right. There are also issues like child custody, but I think a lot of the courts go for 50-50. So if you're not planning for 50-50 child custody, you have to make a case. And that's, completely kind of
Right.
different approach. Maybe Karen, you can talk more about it. But we do believe for matrimonial cases, a lot of it is really kind of at the core about finances.
Well, yeah, I mean, divorce fundamentally, if you really simplify it and boil it down to its most basic proposition, there's only two issues, money and kids. And then within kids, there's a bunch of issues regarding children, there's a bunch of issues regarding money, but it's all going to pretty much be one or the other unless you've got some crazy procedural issue that has to do with jurisdiction or the court process or something like that. But for most people, it's those two issues. But I'm curious because you're talking about making the case affordable and the pro se process. Is your product, is the Anew program simply for pro ses, or is there benefit and value to people, even to those who have lawyers, to use this kind of software program?
It's really for everybody. If you have an attorney, you can use a new software as kind of like a baseline numbers to share with your attorneys, and it would speed up your attorney's work as well and save you some legal fees. If you're just, in the beginning of the process and you're starting with our platform, Anew, you can first have your financial discovery done through our platform. Then you have two options. One is you can try to negotiate and do the settlement talks with your spouse and then do the DIY. If you guys do come to an agreement, we would also offer form filing services. So finishing the divorce packet for you, and then getting to the point of you getting your divorce decree. And the second option is, if you feel like it's not going to be, amicable, and you feel like this is going to be a little bit more complicated, you can also hire an attorney or a mediator through our platform as well to focus on specific issues or to kind of, represent you fully in court. So it's completely up to the users in terms of how they want to manage their case. I think the biggest benefit of our platform is you really get to control how much money you spend. And if you go with an attorney on our platform, you'll always know the pricing beforehand. So you'll always know how much you're paying for before we charge you on anything. So we really try to make sure that people are controlling the cost of their case and everything's working efficiently and driving toward the resolution of the case.
I'm curious because, and maybe this isn't a fair question because I know you're early in the process, you're still in beta, right? So this is the beginning of a movement, not necessarily the end, but divorce law varies state to state. The forms vary state to state. The providers vary state to state. So right now, if somebody is interested in using Anew, like which states are you in? Which states aren't you in? What's going on at this point in time?
Yeah, so currently our beta product is just the financial discovery part of the product. So for net worth and income and expenses, it's state agnostic, right? Because it's not really kind of controlled by state jurisdiction. But for spousal maintenance and child support, that's not part of the beta yet because that's very state specific, and
Right.
that's going to be the next phase of our product.
So if somebody was interested in using the product right now, just to figure out what's my budget going to be, what is it now, what's it going to be post-divorce, what does an asset split look if I do it this way, or this way, that's something that your software could handle even right now.
Correct. Or for a lot of families, the primary residence is their largest asset. So like you want to figure out, what the equity is, how much, you want to buy your spouse out, or how does that play into the overall settlement planning, you can also trade off, certain parts of the marital assets and home equity, figure out what is the best way to do to pay for the settlements. So this is kind of like a planning tool for kind of the major aspects of the household finances. But for spousal maintenance and child custody, it's not available yet. But a lot of users, they can go to the local court's website. Usually they have the formula there. So once you go through the new platform, you'll see kind of the breakdown of all of the income and expenses. So you can use those data and put it into the court formula and then calculate yourself. It's actually a lot easier than most people think.
So right now, does your software platform interface with any of the court forms, or that's your next step? That's one of the future steps.
That's also the future steps, because we are strong believers that doing the math right wins the case. So we really kind of prioritize the financial discovery part of it.
Well, that makes a lot of sense in terms of any kind of financial issues you have. You can't discuss the issue or try to settle a case unless you know your numbers, right? But what would you say to somebody who says, I'm bad with math. I hate math. I don't like numbers. I don't understand numbers. I can't use this. This your platform isn't for me. What would you say to that person?
It may not be as hard as you think if you kind of break down the tasks and, go one step at a time. And that's also kind of the key differentiator of our platform. We really break down the process into manageable step-by-step guidance. So you'll see on our platform, we have the asset section, we have the liability sections, and then within each section, we break that down to savings, checkings. So you can really do everything at your own pace. Maybe you just do 2 sections for 2 hours today, and then you take a break for a day, and then you come back. So it's entirely up to you. Again, like our philosophy is giving our users full control of the process. If you just feel like, I just don't want to do it myself, but then you just have to think, would you rather pay, 5,000 or even all the way up to 20K for legal fees and financial planning fees? Or would you like to kind of slow down a little bit and then getting a better sense of your own finances yourself? Because ultimately, it's you who are living your life. And I think no one cares more about our case than ourselves. Professionals, especially great professionals, they have a lot of cases going on at the same time. So you are the person who's going to give your case 200% attention. So I would say, try to process a lot of the feelings, but at the same time, try to do a little bit every day to manage the process yourself. Ultimately, like you will feel the reward. Maybe it's like 2 years down the line, you feel like, oh, finally, like I'm out of that phase. And now looking back, I'm glad I figured out the math because now I'm living a good quality life.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I just want to, to reinforce what you said. I think it's definitely, good wisdom for people to understand that taking control of their own finances, it's not just going to serve them in the divorce, but it's a skill. It's like any other skill that once you acquire, it's like riding a bicycle. Once you know how to ride, you always know how to ride. So once you know how to do the math in your divorce, that skill carries forward with you throughout the rest of your life, right? So it's something that, yeah, you might not want to acquire that skill, but it's a good thing to do, and it's always going to serve you well. And just for the people out there who are listening, when we say math, we're not talking differential calculus, okay? This is adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. That's pretty much it, right? We're talking grade school math. So I know a lot of people, women especially, get scared off by thinking, oh, math, I can't do math. It's not that kind of math. It's really, I mean, if lawyers can do it, and we're better with words than with numbers typically, honestly, I think that a program like yours, I can totally see the value in it to help everybody figure this stuff out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And if there's like a specific issue that you want like a second opinion, our platform also has, a network of vetted CDFA, the financial planners and divorce financial analysts that can really help you focus on that specific issues and answer all of your questions. So you can have that confidence and reassurance as well. But I think it's always good to be prepared yourself. Actually, one of the reasons I reached out to Karen was I saw one of her videos on YouTube about being prepared for the case. That is so important. It sounds so simple, but that really is the #1 principle for handling your case and managing this huge life event. You have to be prepared. It's good for yourself. And it's good for your kids. If you have children, you set a great example for them to handle the adversities in life.
Yeah, I have to agree with you 100%. It makes so much sense. But I'd like to just, before we go, talk a little bit about money fights. And what are some common misconceptions that divorcing people have about money fights?
Yeah, so I feel like I personally have felt that kind of judgment and that kind of, eyes when I tell people, "Oh, yeah, I'm entering the 3rd year of my divorce." I think generally people have the misconception that if your divorce is about, the money fight is very nasty. And I think the judgment on women is especially hard. And for women, it's kind of like a situation where it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you're the less moneyed spouse and you're, kind of asking for your fair share of the marital settlement, it's easy to feel like you're afraid of people labeling you as greedy or gold digger. And if you're a successful career woman and you're the moneyed spouse and you're fighting for your fair share of the settlement, people will also like label you as demanding, aggressive, cheap, nasty. So you can't do it right. You really just can't do it right. And especially it's such a hard life situation. And if you layer that with the outsider's judgment, you're gonna be too hard on yourself. So my advice for a lot of people is it's okay to talk about money in a divorce because that's the essence of divorce. Like we're supposed to talk about money. So I really hope that they fight fair for themselves, especially, if you're going to be the one who's kind of raising your children. You have the majority of the custody. You're going to have, the decision making kind of rights for a lot of your children's choices. Then it's really important for you to manage the process and fight for yourself and fight for your family. I think a lot of people are afraid of money fight because they feel like, all right, this is too much. I just want to end the suffering. So it's easy for people to feel like, I just don't want to handle the suffering anymore. I'm just going to say yes to any kind of settlement. So be very, very careful about that. Is this really the kind of settlement that you can live with 5 years down the line? I think really looking at the long term and looking at what you are trying to achieve with your own life and your family, that's the most important thing.
I couldn't agree more again. I think these are really important words of wisdom for anyone who's going through a divorce, whether they choose to use an attorney, whether they choose to try to go pro se, no matter what, knowing your numbers, knowing the math, figuring out what matters to you and what you, like you said, are willing to live with 5 years down the line is definitely important. So, Amy, this has been such an interesting conversation. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can learn more about Anew, and where they can jump onto this beta program for Anew if they're interested in that?
Yeah, absolutely. So to sign up for the beta product, you can go to loveanew.co/access divorce, and that's our sign up page. We're opening the access to a small group of users to test out the beta product. And with the beta product, you're going to have a summary of your net worth, the income and expense report, budget planning tools, as well as home equity calculations as well.
Awesome. And so just for anyone who's listening, all of those places are going to be linked up in the show notes so that you can just click on them and easily access them. Amy, I am so grateful to you for being a guest on the podcast. I'm excited to seeing where Love Anew goes, or Anew. I'm not sure if you add the love
I want
or
people to love Anew, so that's why.
okay, I get
The
it.
main
Love
name is
Anew.
loveanew.co. Yeah. But
So that's beautiful. So for everyone listening, go to loveanew.co, check out the new software program, which depending on when you're listening to this may still be free. So why not, right? And Amy, thank you again. And for those of you who are out there watching or listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, if you want to hear and see more of this, please do me a big favor, like, subscribe. It makes all the difference in the world. And I look forward to seeing you all again next time.
thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.